welcome to this edition of the Mize Breakroom. I'm your host, Marc Swearengin, Director of Business Development. With me today, I have Brandon Mills, State and Local Tax Manager, and Jacob Dickey, Relationship Manager. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
You bet. Jump right into it. Tell us, what is the SALT group and what do you guys do?
Okay, the SALT group is, there's actually 7 people that work in SALT. That's their primary job. What they mostly do is sales tax returns for clients. They also work on personal property tax renditions. They do unclaimed property for clients, and we do a whole bunch of miscellaneous taxes as well.
Or it starts to engage us. What are some of the challenges you see that they're coming to us with that you and your team have to tackle for them?
Generally, a lot of times we see new clients that come over. The biggest challenge they normally have is with the marketplace facilitators for their delivery sales. That is very difficult for the clients to get right by their own means. Oftentimes we'll see clients that have been double paying sales tax on their delivery sales for years and years and just never even realized it. Other things that we tend to see is like mistakes with tax rates, which can get very, very expensive as well.
Great. So there's marketplace facilities, the things like Uber Eats and that kind of thing for our clients. Is that what you're speaking of?
Yes, that is. Each state handles those differently, and vendors are not same even in the same state. So an example for like California, we've got currently one vendor that actually remits for California and the other 2 do not. So that's something that's very difficult for clients to keep track of.
And imagine it's getting bigger, right? I think that we're seeing that becoming more and more of our clients'
it's been a
business.
It's been a big push recently, and clients like just having us as another layer of, people looking at their transactions that occur and helping them point out some stuff, because there's a lot of data out there for them. Especially when you get into all those reports, as Brandon knows, it can be tough to keep track of on a client level. So having another set of eyes, really, I think a lot of clients really appreciate that.
And big portions of the revenue is being driven through these channels anymore.
Absolutely.
Yes. That's great. So a couple things you'd mentioned. So tell me what unclaimed property is.
Okay, so unclaimed property is basically, for the McDonald's perspective, it's almost exclusively employee paychecks, where you've had an employee, maybe they worked for a couple hours, decided that it wasn't for them. They didn't realize that they actually had a payroll check sitting out there for them. So they never picked that check up. You've never seen that person again, and you're just kind of holding on to that money. A lot of people kind of think that that's actually their money, but the states have a different opinion on that, and they think that money actually needs to be turned into them. And so what we do is we'll look for those checks that are outstanding that no one has claimed. Then we'll write due diligence letters to send them out to the employee's last known address to see if we can get those checks cleared up. And then if all else fails, that money is going to have to be turned into the state.
What happens if these business owners don't do this? What if they don't file this?
If they get caught, they will be, in often cases, very large penalties on this. I mean, we've seen states run 18% interest a year on these checks, and they can go back 20 years sometimes to look for these. So,
that's crazy.
Yes.
Obviously, you guys do a lot of sales tax.
Yes.
So what happens if they're I imagine a lot of clients feel they can do it themselves, and they might. What happens if they do it wrong? If they're not compliant, they don't do it on time, or just don't do it at all?
Well, if you don't file on time, you're usually going to get very large penalties. Penalties for not filing on time can run as high as 20% of tax.
Well,
so it just kind of depends on the state and the locality that you're in and how much they're going to charge you on that. As far as doing things wrong, a lot of times you're not going to get caught until you get audited. But then you've got 4 years of back taxes that you're going to have to pay for whatever the auditor finds.
So even if they slightly miss the percentage or something like that.
Yeah, if they slightly miss the percentage, that's going to add up to a large amount over time.
So even more so why they probably shouldn't be doing that themselves. Business owners are usually pretty busy. This is probably some detail work they should have folks like yourself do.
It's really not worth the risk.
What about individuals in multiple states? Like, how do we deal with that? If you're a business owner, you're working in multiple states, is there more complexities with that? Somebody that might be doing that?
Yeah, if you're in multiple states, you're going to have multiple returns, obviously. So each state's going to have its own return. The due dates on the states may be different. And then you've got all the localities to also deal with on the sales tax portion of that.
So, when you talk about the state and local, we were talking about this earlier, how do you guys stay up on all the changes?
Well, we subscribe to several subscription services.
Okay.
And what they'll do is I'll get like an email from 3 different places every single morning. And I'll read those emails and I'll scan for changes that are going to affect the clients that we have. So I do that every single day I work here, as soon as I get in the office usually. And then at the end of each month, we usually scan for changes for the marketplace facilitators. A lot of times they will change, one of them will change in what states they're going to remit in, or they may pull back on a state. So we have to adjust for those. That's something that we do every single month. And at the end of every month, we will check the tax rate for every single store.
My goodness. I imagine
all of them. So
that's you have people that just focus on that?
Well, that's part of their end of month duties is they got to do rate monitoring for every single store that they have, that they file returns for.
Oh. So going back to the marketplace facilitator discussion a little bit ago, what kind of challenges are our clients facing that? I feel that, we have some clients that they can see 40, 50% of the revenue is driven through those channels.
It's a lot of stuff to keep track of, and it's very confusing. And it's very hard for us to really get into a lot of stuff. We can get into the details and like actually track and see, a transaction where it's coming from. But when we're reconciling delivery, we have 2 things we're reconciling against. I mean, really 3, but all the sales that are recorded in the MyQSR soft portal. And we have the DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub vendors that we get reports from. And then we see what clears the bank. So that's kind of our process each month. The tough part is when we have a large, shortage or overage of cash that is coming through, and we don't know why. To like go and find out why it is, we have to go drill down and try to trace a transaction, right? That seems like the most logical way to do it. The tough part is we can't see every single transaction in QSR Soft. So we can see every transaction on the delivery reports, but without being able to compare it to the other side of it, it just makes it very difficult to try and reconcile between the two. So there's still a lot of unknowns. And until we can really trace one in QSR Soft and have it match, and then be able to do that on a larger scale, it's going to be tough to really have a certain opinion on some of these or explanation on some of these variances we're seeing.
And they don't have to pay tax, right? On the delivery revenue. Is that what I heard? Well, how is taxes factored in for the delivery? Like, do they pay the taxes? Who pays the taxes?
That's where it varies, as Brandon said, some state by state on.
It's going to be state by state, and it's going to be delivery vendor by delivery vendor.
Yeah, which makes it even more confusing.
Right.
Harder to keep track of.
So then they change things continually too.
The states.
So the states will change, and then the delivery vendors will react to it, and then they'll change too. Some of them may, they'll come on and they'll be in a staggered, rollout on that. So some of them may do it right away. Others, it will take 6 months. And then we've had this problem several times where they decided to start remitting after they told us they weren't. And now we've got all of these refund checks we need to get from the state because we've been paying it twice because they didn't tell us what they were going to do.
I assume getting refund checks from the state is it's not an easy process or time.
It is very difficult to get refunds from the state.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't want that money.
We had a client in, I think it was North Dakota, and they had been double paying their delivery sales. And it took almost a year and a half to get North Dakota to cough up that money.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah.
And it's just constant calling.
Man.
Sending them stuff, and they'd ask us for something else. And then it said on it, and then they'd say, well, we need this.
Man.
When the client was calling me the entire time, it's like, where's the money at?
I bet. What about like refunds in that too? How does that affect? Like, if I go to Favor or something like that, and then who refunds the patron, and whose responsibility is that? So, for example, if they pick up something and they're like, yeah, I'm not, we got to refund this person. Food is cold, whatever that complaint is. How do refunds get handled through this process?
It's a whole another layer on top of it, because that's been a big thing we've had to learn this year and had to start implementing into our monthly financial statement compilation work, is accounting for those refunds and sales. Because previously, when a sale was refunded, it was the reported sales did not change. So now we're having to report adjustments as an additional layer each month. And then sales tax has to account for that too. And they're going through and compiling the sales tax returns.
Man.
And then we have to decide whether this affects the sales tax return or not. Because is this a tax that we remitted, or are we just going to subtract it out here and then subtract it out there, and it's going to equal to nothing? So it's the point in adjusting it on the sales tax returns.
How about, I think I've heard this, the reporting coming from the third parties versus our reporting, do they match up all the time, or?
Yeah, no, they don't. No, and that's where it's tough. That was kind of where I was going before, was we have unexplained variances that it's hard to get an answer for. And that's a lot of times because the reporting does not match up. So we're trying to compare one to the other. And if you're not comparing apples to apples, it's very tough to really actually get where you want to go.
How is it easy to work with those third parties? Are they very responsive when there's questions?
Depends on the day.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, it's hard to get any extra information out of it. You kind of have the reports and the DAC that you're given, and that's the most of it.
Yeah. But it certainly seems like something that the business owners should be taking harder and harder looks at as more of their revenue gets put to that.
Absolutely.
What tips do you have for the business owners that are engaging and using these services? So
some of the tips that we have for as the delivery has increased so much with your sales is just, the biggest thing is just keep a better eye on it. Kind of look at those reports, work with your accountant is the main thing, and make sure that you're getting the money, that everything's clearing your account as it should. Nothing's left out there in the vendor accounts, because there might be a bank information account number that's incorrect. We've seen that before, where you're not getting deposits and that's all it is. It just needs updated. But just kind of keep an eye on it as it's growing and will continue to grow. We check them at the end of each month. So if there's anything that goes on, it's a lot easier to catch something in real time, or as close to real time as it can be. When you get a month in arrear, it makes it a lot tougher to go back and really try and remember, because we might see something like, hey, there was doesn't look like you got all the money from these couple dates, but maybe there was a power outage. Maybe there was something, that went wrong, and you might not remember what day that was a month ago. You might have to spend some time. But if you're kind of thinking about those things, but that's a lot easier said than done too, because, right, you have a lot of stuff that's going on in your day to day.
Yeah. What's theft like with the delivery services? Because sometimes I'll go into a place and they just have bags up there, and like, they don't really check, people just take them. Is theft a big issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't heard from a ton of people that it is.
Okay.
I would imagine, because I would say the same thing, that there would be some theft involved. But I'm not sure.
You know what the numbers are? Yeah. Probably gets into the refunds, I would imagine,
yes,
right? The theft that's where it comes from.
Reminds me of the time when this first started. We had a couple delivery vendors that they weren't remitting the taxes, but they were keeping the taxes and not giving it back to the clients. So they were just pocketing all the delivery taxes. And then,
Oof.
So we found out about that, and it's like, okay, well, they're subtracting these taxes out of your payments every month, but they're not remitting those. What are they doing with them? So we had a whole bunch of clients that had to go back and it's like, hey, give us this money back.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that still an issue, or
No, it hasn't been for a
Okay.
long time, but that was, when this first rolled out, they had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
So then they would see it's like, oh, we're supposed to remit the tax. So somebody was withholding the tax, but they weren't actually doing anything with it. So the store was just out that money.
You know, someone's watching, or if they haven't, what are the steps they should take to get started with this? Is it, you know, calling the team, engaging? What should they be thinking about to make sure they're kind of compliant in all these areas?
Go through your relationship manager. Your relationship manager will be able to introduce you to the people that need to be told. And once we get, the process started, and then they can reach out to me and we'll get you a preparer signed. And
Yeah, reach out to your relationship manager and we'll get in touch with Brandon and his team and make sure that everything we need or need to get set up or need to get going is all right. Get the ball moving there.
And those of you that aren't engaged with Mize, we can get you introduced to Mr. Dickey here to kind of evaluate kind of your needs and what you guys might need to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you guys spending some time to talk about it. If anybody has any questions or would like some more information, you can send an email to Breakroom at Mize CPAs, and I can make sure these fine gentlemen can get that information to answer any questions you have. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Mize Breakroom. If you watch this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find the Mize Breakroom anywhere you can find podcasts. If you like what you heard, please rate and review the podcast 5 stars. Looking for more information? You can find us on most social media platforms at Mize CPAs. Thanks for listening and see you next time in the Breakroom. The Mize Breakroom is produced by Mize CPAs and hosted by Marc Swearengin. Mize CPAs is not a law firm and does not provide legal advice. The information shared in this podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to constitute legal or technical accounting, tax, consulting, and/or professional advice that may apply to your specific business. The listener is encouraged to consult counsel and or their accountant before making decisions or taking any action concerning the matters in this communication to address the recipient's particular facts, circumstances, position, business considerations, or other unique relevant matters, as well as to evaluate any applicable federal, state, or local laws.